Good afternoon, everyone. Hurricane Milton is now a powerful Category 5 hurricane. It's been mind-boggling to watch this all morning, just continually to rapidly drop in intensity. And the millibars have lowered all the way down to 911. I mean, look at this perfectly symmetrical hurricane. Literally, the eye is 5 miles wide. The more condensed it is, the stronger it can be. And there are definitely signs it may not actually be done even as of yet. Right now, it's got 175 mile per hour major hurricane, Category 5, actually the fourth, tied for the fourth strongest on record. So we're kind of in rare territory right now with this storm continuing to intensify, and then all systems go as expected to make landfall sometime around Wednesday evening in and around the Tampa region as a devastating storm. Here is the latest wave projection. So obviously this is going to cause an extreme amount of swells out ahead of the storm, and you're talking upwards to almost 60-foot waves off the coast. So this is a combination of a very dangerous, powerful Category 5. Now it is expected to weaken a little bit, so we'll be going over some of those details, but nonetheless, it's not even stopped yet, folks. It's still continuing to intensify as we speak, just north of the Yucatan. So right now, here is the latest estimates on the potential storm surge with this storm. So we're talking we could have impacts essentially all the way in and around the Tampa region down to Charlotte, all the way up here into portions of Cedar Key. Right now, the cone literally extends from Cedar Key all the way down to the Naples region. So right there in the middle, right where you see that red is, that's the area that we're mainly concerned about, especially in and around the Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater region. 8 to 12 foot, that even could be conservative with this storm continuing to intensify as we speak. So here's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Right now, we're looking at a powerful Category 5, 175 mile per hour hurricane. We're talking winds wind gust of upwards 200 miles an hour. It is moving that eastward trajectory, and it's following the line right around us. There's going to be a stalled cold front right there into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's keeping this system kind of more of a west to east type movement. And yes, all systems go with the hurricane watches unfolding from Cedar Key all the way down to Naples. And man, look at the pressure drops, folks. The aircraft recovery's been in there like every single hour this morning. And even this morning, I woke up early, it was 100 mile per hour hurricane, and it continued to drop, and now we're literally at 175. So this is on the cusp of almost, meeting Wilma criteria. I mean, if you remember, Wilma back in 2005 dropped all the way down to an 882 at the lowest, and it only had like a 2 mile wide eye. This one has about a 5 or a 6 mile wide eye. So, and there are some signs it actually may not be actually done, still intensifying. That's the concerning. So here is what is now Milton, just right off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. This is expected to turn a little bit further off to the northeast, but there's the boundary, there's the cool front, and it's basically going to follow right within this line of this cool front and puts it right on the cusp of Tampa sometime around 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. So here's the concern, because here's the latest update from the hurricane models, and these have been pointing at a fairly grim picture and kind of hinting at these could be lower. Even this morning they were down to like in the 920 range, and even that wasn't enough. So now as we refresh some of these hurricane models, now this one drops it down to a 905 millibar, and if we continue, this is the HMON model right at about 913 is kind of where we are right now. But yes, hurricane models are very bullish on this system, and right now the National Hurricane Center does in fact have that 175 mile per hour hurricane, and is expected to continue. Now as it lifts further north, it is going to start maxing out. So there are some signs it could go through like what they call an eye wall replacement cycle tonight. And there is a possibility once it falls over that loop current into the Gulf of Mexico that it could keep its intensity. But once it moves out past that loop current, most indications do look to weaken this storm down to a category 5 and 4, and then by the time it actually makes landfall, come on land in and around the Tampa region, right at about 125 mile per hour. Now get it, that's going to be a formidable hurricane, especially with the large swells and the decreasing of intensity, kind of like what happened with Katrina, right? It maximized at 175, even though it did make landfall at category 3. Obviously it had devastating storm impacts. So this is going to be the strongest hurricane Tampa's seen since 1921. So this is definitely rare territory. Before that, you'd have to go all the way back to like 1848, right? I mean, so here's the latest HFS, B model. Now, of course, this is just one model, but it kind of shows you the severity of what this potential storm could take it up to. Now, this is an outliner, but if this definitely comes to fruition, this would paint a scary picture, looking at continuing to intensify, going through that possible eye wall replacement cycle tonight. And then as it goes over to that loop current sometime tomorrow afternoon, that's when it could actually re-intensify and could balloon and go sub 900 millibar. And some indications with this even the latest estimate actually takes it down to an 884. Now that would be Wilma type criteria. So yeah, there are some hurricane models painting a grim picture that we could have right on the cusp of one of the strongest storms in the Atlantic basin of all time. So this is where we're at, folks, with this storm. So everybody needs to take this storm very seriously, as a powerful hurricane is set to make landfall in and around the Tampa region. So right now, here is the latest update. This was as of 3:15 Eastern time of the actual orders of evacuations within this zone. So follow your color here, but they'll be adding more of these. But right now, these are the mandatory evacuation zones that do heed all the warnings, because obviously this is going to be a devastating storm, compounding with the 12-foot storm surge and possibly another foot of rain with those 60-foot waves crashing offshore. So all that combination does not paint a pretty picture. You can imagine with all the power outages are going to unfold across this region, the water, everything is going to be displaced. Here's the overall rain estimates right now. So right now, the kind of the lower end, the southern flank, getting those outer bands in and around the Key West region, the Miami region, the Fort Lauderdale region. And then as this continues to get a little bit closer, some of those impacts lift further north. So the main swath is going to be from Tampa to Orlando to Jacksonville. It's going to keep its intensity. So yes, I mean, we could be having impacts literally all the way from Tallahassee down to Key West, with the main bullseye between essentially Cedar Key and Naples, and more importantly, the Clearwater, the St. Petersburg, and the Tampa region. This puts it directly right into the bay. So here's the latest update. Right now, it's got a formidable category 3 hurricane at landfall right there in Tampa. I mean, you can see this is the bay, folks. This is the worst case scenario for them, as it pushes all that onshore flow and puts devastating storm surge into the bay at a formidable 125 mile per hour hurricane right around 7 o'clock on Wednesday evening, folks. So Wednesday evening, and you can see it continues to move through, and this will likely extend all the way into the Orlando region through Daytona Beach, and then eventually back out into the open waters of the Atlantic. So as we get closer, here's the kind of what it would look like around 7 o'clock on Wednesday morning, with those outer bands continuing to unfold. There are going to be leaving a pretty good swath. I mean, this whole area has just been saturated and inundated, already well over 20 inches above average for the year, even before Milton has come. Now we're going to be adding another foot of rain on top of those unprecedented totals so far this season. So yeah, this is going to be extremely dangerous situation. So as we get into that Wednesday night time frame, there is your formidable storm making landfall in and around the Tampa region with torrential rains, very high winds, and storm surge. and then that will continue to lift northeast and put it back near the Jacksonville region to the Orlando region, with that swath of wind moving all the way across pretty much the entire coastline, folks, from the western coastline to the eastern coastline, and then reemerge back out into, still as a hurricane, back out into the open waters of the Atlantic, and bringing those winds just on the cusp of the far outskirts of southeastern Georgia, as well as into South Carolina as well, because this is still likely going to be a hurricane as fast as actually continuing to move. But I just think those, just those clipper, just right along the coastal regions does get impacts from this storm. Everybody else kind of stays dry with this system. And so by the time we head into your Friday time frame, it's continuing to move off the coast of the Atlantic. So it's mainly going to be a Florida impact with some outskirts of Georgia as well as into South Carolina. Other than that, most everywhere else is going to be fairly dry and warm for October standards, as that Pacific, that Pacific jet stream continues to remain alive and strong, pumping in that warm air from the west. And that will continue through the week ahead. And overall, the precipitation looks like this, right? I mean, all the moisture gets stolen into Milton and just feeds it into the storm. But the rest of the country is pretty bone dry. I mean, these are dry, cool fronts that are coming through. You can see entire states not getting a lick of precipitation. This is an entire week, folks. It's going to be bone dry for a good part of the country. The only instability in town is going to be right there in Florida, and then right on the outskirts of the southeastern portions of Georgia, as well as the Carolinas. But nonetheless, yeah, we had some storms last night before the Cowboy game in Pittsburgh, but those have moved out, and everything else is fairly dry, even portions of the Northeast as well. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll give you another update tomorrow on the latest on Milton, so stay tuned and catch me in the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.